Hi, Skillful Teachers. As you know, our team has been experimenting with using digital resources to support learning in our course, and for the most part we've been doing screencasts as a way of reviewing, or if people were absent or had to miss a part of a session. Today I'm trying something new, which is a preview. I wanted to kind of tell you what's in store for November 13th, and we think this will help you prepare for the day and maybe focus your reading a little bit more. So let's get started. So the day is November 13th. It starts at 8 a.m. We'll have breakfast available beforehand. And up until now, we've been exclusively in the motivations area of teacher performance, starting with expectations in August, and then we added in personal relationship building for our October session. So now we're moving up in the pyramid into the planning realm, and you're going to read the chapter on objectives, which is chapter 16. And then we're also adding in the clarity chapter from the instructional strategies area, but just the second half of that. This chapter is one of our participants' favorite. It's a great chapter. It's really long though, and so we wanted to split it into two parts. And we're starting with the second half. Actually, let me use the next slide to explain why we're starting with the second half. So these questions here are the guiding questions for the Skillful Teacher course. They're also guiding questions for many of the PLCs around the different schools. And so, as you can see, this first question, what do we want students to know and be able to do, that aligns perfectly with the objectives chapter. And we use the term mastery objectives to talk about the daily objectives that you want as opposed to unit objectives. That chapter also talks about thinking skill objectives, which are a little bit different. So we'll go into that. And page 377 is actually a really good summary of both mastery objectives and thinking skill objectives. And then on page 386 there's another image there that kind of gives a conceptual framework for what we're talking about. It talks about nesting and the different kind of ways that teachers think about planning. And so this whole area is in planning, and we think this chapter gives a really good overview of both the theory as well as some practical ideas around what teachers should be thinking about as they're planning lessons. The next section is of the day is going to be on criteria for success, and this is because mastery objectives need to be one succinct sentence, and they don't always reveal exactly how you will know if students have met your expectations. Criteria for success is a strategy summarized on page 378 and expanded upon in that chapter as well. And it's just a way for you to be really clear with your students about what the final product will look like and how they'll know if they're on target. Those two things will take up the morning, and then in the afternoon we're going to shift into clarity. Now, part one of the clarity chapter is all about what we would call teacher clarity. It's about framing the learning. It's about using explanatory devices or a repertoire of ways to explain things to students, and it's really about clarity in the way that you're presenting. And then the second part, starting on page 190, talks about this concept called cognitive empathy, which is getting inside students' heads. And so the first part is just a real general look at what checking for understanding looks like and what to do once you're checking for understanding, how to respond to different student understanding. And then on page 204 it gets into this whole really cool section on questioning and different reasons for questioning and how to write questions and what the purposes are, etc. So the first part of that will be looking in general at checking for understanding, and then we're going to get specifically into making student thinking visible. And in this part we're really going to jump from theory into practice, and we're going to go back to that same drill type of activity that we've done in the previous two sessions. So it's really important that you bring a few questions that you can practice with. You can actually use the exact same questions as you had previously, but we're going to add on to what you've already done with no opt-out and cold call, and we're going to add a series of moves that we're calling MTV moves, or making thinking visible. And they're ways that you can really draw students' understanding so that you're really trying to understand why they have correct answers or why they have incorrect answers, so that you can better guide your teaching. So that's pretty much what we're going to do in terms of what we hope that you get out of the day. By the end of this session, we hope that you can frame mastery objectives that will guide your planning better and will also focus the learners on what's important. so that you can better send that "this is important" message. And then secondly, we hope that you can will be able to develop formative assessments using criteria for success, so that you're really clear about what the final product will look like, so that you can answer the question that you know that they know it. So that's the first the morning. And then in the afternoon, we think that you'll be able to develop a broader repertoire of informal formative assessments or checks for understanding. And those are formative because they will guide your instruction in the moment. And so these aren't necessarily the exit ticket strategies, but they're more kind of in the moment, what you can do while you're in class so that you can adjust your instruction so that students better meet the objectives. To give you a sense of the agenda of how we're going to put all this together, we're starting with a really brief warm-up on "this is important." In order for students to think something's important, it has to actually be important. So we want to find out from you what you think is important and how it shows up in your curriculum. And then Viviana's going to lead this section on daily mastery objectives. And after that, there'll be about 30 to 45 minutes of work time. So it's important that you bring things that you can work, like lesson plans or other materials, because you'll have a significant amount of time to try to actually write daily mastery objectives for upcoming lessons. And then after that, Greg is going to lead the section on criteria for success. And the same thing, once he finishes, we'll give you another 30 to 45 minutes to try to write criteria for success for an upcoming assessment, so you can kind of fine-tune something. Then we'll have lunch. After lunch, Charity's going to lead this session on checking for understanding. And again, afterwards, you'll have a little bit of time to work to try to infuse checks for understanding into an upcoming lesson. And then at the end of the day, we're going to do the drills again. So I will introduce making thinking visible and a little bit of kind of the why behind it, but we'll jump pretty quickly into the how. We'll give you a checklist, some criteria for success, and then have you work in actually groups of 4, where you're going to have 2 students and then the teacher and then 1 observer, and you're going to try to make student thinking visible in order to pinpoint confusion or make connections or other things like that. And then, as always, we'll end on time. We'll have closure around 2:45, including probably a feedback survey, since we're kind of getting pretty deep into the class and we want to make sure that we're meeting all of your needs. So hopefully that is going to set you up for the readings and to prepare for the day. If you have any questions, obviously let us know, and otherwise we'll see you next Thursday. Bye.